What's going on, y'all? This is John with Facemask Fantasy, bringing you new fantasy content every day right here on this channel. So if you have not hit that subscribe button, please do. But without further ado, let's get into some fantasy talk. A report just came out that Raheem Mostert, running back for the 49ers, will undergo season-ending knee surgery. He announced it via a statement on his Twitter account. His recovery is expected to be 6 months. And with Jeff Wilson also on IR, still mending for about the next 6 to 8 weeks, Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon, and Jermichael Hasty are the only running backs available for the 49ers for the foreseeable future. Now, Elijah Mitchell had the hot hand last game when Mostert went out after only 2 carries for 20 yards, and Trey Sermon was a surprise inactive despite having 3rd-round draft capital from this past year's draft. I've heard rumblings that the benching could have been disciplinary. It could have been for something off-field or out-of-practice situations. It could have also been directed at Brandon Ayuk because Brandon Ayuk was weirdly not used by the Niners at all in their win against the Lions. Now, this is speculation, but if that were the case, I would expect that Sermon would be active over Mitchell as soon as week 2. Again, speculation. But I believe this is being speculated because there's been no news of this out of Niners camp all offseason or during the preseason that Mitchell had leapfrogged Trey in any way, form, or fashion. Now, there's also speculation that Mitchell offered something on special teams that Trey does not, and thus, as a depth back at the time, was left off of the game day roster because of his rushing ability and wasn't expected to be relied upon heavily in their pre-week 1 game plan. Now that won't be the case. We can throw the speculation out the window. They need him now as both Mostert and Wilson are out. The Niners' leading rusher from 2020 was Jeff Wilson, who himself will be back in 8 weeks, with the backfield now split between Elijah, Trey, and Jermichael Hasty, and we've already done a video on Elijah Mitchell. Go and check it out. It's got me asking, who is Trey Sermon? Now, the 49ers traded up with the Rams to select Ohio State running back Trey Sermon with the 88th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. Sermon's 6 foot, 215 pounds, and in college he only collected 339 totes, but he ran at a 6.1 yards per carry clip. Towards the end of his college career, Sermon looked like one of the class's top rushers, but he exited college with just 320-plus carry games and only 48 receptions across 45 career contests. So not what you're looking for from a production perspective when you're looking at his college resume. Though he does come with 73rd percentile adjusted spark athleticism, he ran a 4.59 40, and he steps into a situation where he can assert himself as this team's RB1, as he was likely drafted to be with his 3rd-round draft capital. Now, he's not the fastest back in this draft. He's not the most powerful either. He doesn't seem to have elite running back traits. He just does everything really well. He was a platoon back in college. I would expect him to be somewhat of a platoon back in the pros, especially on a team with a coaching staff that prides itself on being fluid with their running back situation. But it didn't always used to be this way. The last time we saw a running back 1 type for Shanahan was Devonta Freeman, the 4th rounder, lower draft capital than Trey Sermon, not the typical body type we see from an RB1. He was the RB1 overall in 2015. In 2016, Devonta Freeman was the RB6. And before him, Alfred Morris, 6th rounder, was the RB15 in 2013 and the RB5 in 2012. In 2017, Carlos Hyde was the RB11. In 2018, Matt Breida was the RB24 in a down year for the Shanahan run game. 2018 was around when Shanahan started playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo with his running backs every week. In 2019, his leading rusher was Mostert, RB20 on the season. And in 2020, we already been over this, Jeff Wilson was the RB26, their leading rusher in 2020. But if we're going back before 2018, from 2018 to 2020, the lead rusher for the Niners was on average RB24. The lowest of low-end RB2s. But prior to that, we have a pretty insane stretch. 2012 RB5, 2013 RB15, 2014 it was a down year for the Shanahan run game. Isaiah Crowell with the Browns, RB24. 2015 RB1, 2016 RB6, 2017 RB11. And it looks like, looking back on history, that Shanahan has opted for RBCs because his choices for RB1s recently haven't been able to stay healthy. Namely Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert in 2019 and 2020. But when he identifies a workhorse who can hold up to the punishment, regardless of draft capital, he makes them the high-end fantasy RB1 more often than not. So there's a chance that Sermon can be that guy if he can prove himself durable enough and reliable enough and athletic enough to hold off Mitchell. But my guess is that he's still in somewhat of a platoon with Mitchell and Hasty to a smaller extent. And whenever Wilson comes back, Jeff Wilson as well, as he will muddy the waters in the season-long situations, the bigger question for me when looking at Trey Sermon's profile is college production. Why did it take him until the last 3 games of his college career to dominate? Is he good enough to be an NFL starter? Is it just at that point he was older than everybody and could manhandle some of the younger players that he was playing against in college? And if he's good enough to be an NFL starter, why wasn't he good enough to be a starter at Oklahoma in college? These aren't fun questions, but they're important questions. I think they deserve to be asked, specifically in season-long leagues. But I believe where Sermon's real value will come is in dynasty situations. In dynasty situations, Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell are the only backs signed on this team after this year. They're the future here, and Sermon's got the draft capital edge. So even though he was a healthy scratch in his first game, do not count out Trey Sermon. Shanahan backs seem to have an absolute floor if you're the lead back of RB24, the lowest of RB2s, but still an RB2, which is very valuable in fantasy. A running back with the floor of the lowest of low-end running back 2s and the ceiling of RB1 overall is not something you find often on your waiver wires, but I believe that's what he is. So to me, Trey Sermon's got the floor of RB24, as Shanahan backs seem to have the floor of RB24 dating back to 2012, and he has the ceiling of overall RB1. Shanahan has gotten backs to overall RB1 status before. He's gotten them to RB1 status 3 times, with Alfred Morris and Devonta Freeman twice. Trey Sermon could be next up in that line. He could be the one to finally buck this trend that's been going on for the past 3 years in Shanahan offenses, where running back seems to be the most fluid position on the roster from week to week. So what do you guys think about Trey Sermon? Put your thoughts in the comment section below. My name is John Alsace, and this is Facemask Fantasy, bringing you new fantasy content every day right here on this channel. So if you have not subscribed already, please hit that button. Thank you for listening and have a great day.